So it looks pretty likely that Bruno Lage is going to become Wolves' new manager probably sometime this week. So I thought I'd sit down and have a look at the squad that he's going to be dealing with, have a look at how he may well play and how he may well line up. So, of course, I'm going to be looking at the existing players at the club and then picking out pockets of the team that I think need improving and picking out a couple of players that I think Wolves could have a look at or could be realistic replacements for some of the gaps in the squad and for some of the players that may well be leaving. As always, guys, be sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if there are any gaps in the squad and you have a better replacement than the guys that I've suggested in today's video, make sure you let me know. So then let's start off with the goalkeeper. Of course, Rui Patricio at the moment is the club's #1 goalkeeper, and there are pretty heavy rumours at the moment that he is looking to possibly leave the club. The club that are most interested or being pushed the most at the moment are Jose Mourinho's Roma side. We're not going to get a conclusion to that rumour up until the end of the European Championship. So that one is going to be doing the rounds for the next few weeks or so. However, it does look pretty strong. There's a strong possibility that he could be moving on. So, really, the three goalkeepers that I've picked out to possibly be a replacement for Rui Patricio. The first one is actually Alphonse Areola, who's out on loan at Fulham last season, on loan from Paris Saint-Germain, and I never realised how old he was. He's actually 28 years of age, so still plenty of time left in his career as a goalkeeper, but I did think he was a little bit younger than that. You can see it's quite difficult to pick out stats for goalkeepers, but you can see on here very decent command of his area and so on, and of course decent save percentage. He would have faced a lot of shots as goalkeeper of Fulham this year. You'd expect that PSG will probably look to move him on, especially as they've still got Keylor Navas and still possibly bringing in the likes of Donnarumma this summer. So I think Areola got that domestic experience this year in the Premier League, knows what it's all about, could definitely be a very adequate replacement for Rui Patricio. Another one is Odyssey's Vlachodimos, the Benfica goalkeeper. Now, there's going to be a couple of players in here that relate to Bruno Lage's time at Benfica, and this is the first one of those. Now, this one sort of makes sense because he was the #1 for Benfica, or he has been the #1 for Benfica for the last few years, played under Bruno Lage as his #1. But this year, his playing time has been split a little bit more. It's sort of been 50-50, split with a brand new goalkeeper that Benfica brought in at the start of the season. So, you know, rather than him being a rotation goalkeeper, there's definitely an opportunity for him to come to Wolves and be a #1 goalkeeper. If you don't know much about him, he's a 27-year-old goalkeeper, represents Greece at an international level, and been at Benfica since 2018. He had played for Panathinaikos and even Stuttgart before that as well. So I think that's definitely an adequate option. Or if you want to go to the sort of next generation of goalkeepers, you could definitely look at Porto's Diogo Costa as well. A very, very highly tipped goalkeeper. Did very well for Portugal at the UEFA Euro Under-21 tournament this summer. And yeah, unfortunately they lost in the final, but he was a really, really good part of that. Not really broken into the first team side of things as of yet, so it probably would be a risk to bring him in as a #1. But definitely an option that Wolves could possibly look at in the next few seasons or so. So, I mean, on my list, I am going to put Patricio on there. But like I said, I think those three options are maybes if Patricio does look to go. And of course, as his #2 and #3, I'm going to put John Ruddy there. For the squad depth, John Ruddy, we don't know the situation with him at the moment. He has been offered a new contract by the club, and maybe by the time of this video's release, there may be a decision on that. If not, I think Matthias Sarkic, who's been out on loan at Shrewsbury this season, could be the #2 or #3 choice going into next season. We'll start off with probably one of the easier positions, outfield. It's going to be right back. I don't think there's a huge amount of work to do for Wolves in this position. Nelson Semedo, the club spent quite a large sum of money on last summer. It was said that he was Nuno's #1 target throughout the summer and ended up getting him. It was a really slow start for Nelson, but he grew into the season. Still a very much Marmite player. You'll see large proportions of the fans like and dislike how he is and how he plays, but I think definitely he's a player that Wolves need to persist with and play with And hopefully, I think in a system, if it allows him to attack, he could really, really flourish for Wolves next season. And behind him, Keanu Hoover, again, a young player, possibly could look to loan him out next season and bring in a backup right back for Semedo. But Keanu Hoover definitely going to be that right back and a young player with still lots of promise. Before we go on to the centre-backs, I'm going to go to the left-backs. It's an area that, on paper, Wolves are pretty well stacked in. However, due to injuries and certain situations, we don't know how that's going to go. So Ryan Aït-Nouri, I would probably put in there. I've got a feeling the club should go on to sign him after a very decent ending to this season as well. Similar to Semedo, I think he's a little bit Marmite. There are proportions of the fan base that like and dislike him, but I would persist with him as well, spending the money on him. If we can negotiate an even better deal with Angers, then brilliant, because obviously the option was around 20 million euros. If we can get it for less than that, then great. So I would persist with him. I think as a backup to him, Marçal. Again, been dreadful with injuries this year. The club possibly could look into letting him go in some capacity, but we don't know yet. And of course, Johnny would be the number one option there, but again, his injury could see him out until around Christmas time. Now, you've got two backup options there in Ryan Giles and Ruben Vinagre. Ryan Giles has done pretty well at championship level this season. Could he step up and be a backup option? Maybe. And Ruben Vinagre, very, very similar player to Ryan Aït-Nouri, could be used as a make-way in some deals with Benfica or with Sporting, two clubs that are very much interested in him. So, although I wouldn't be saying no to Vinagre returning to the club, I think at the moment, whilst his stock is pretty high, I think the club will cash in on him, and he won't be part of Bruno Lage's plans for this upcoming season. Now, centre-back situation, I'm just going to merge this into one rather than do it as a right centre-back and left centre-back. I think Willy Bolly, of course, is going to be one of the ones in there. Connor Cody, I think, will still definitely be an option in there. Romain Saiss and Max Kilman. Kilman, we may well see move on, but centre-back is that one area that I think everybody knows the club really, really needs to strengthen, because we haven't strengthened it at all since we have been promoted to the Premier League. And I don't think people would disagree if I said we don't just need one, we possibly need two new centre-backs, because in January, when Willy Bolly and Romain Saiss go off to Africa Cup of Nations, it is going to leave quite a big hole in our squad. So I've picked out two centre-backs for this area. The first one is Diogo Leite, centre-back from Porto. Again, another player from that UEFA Euro under 21 competition for Portugal, pretty much an ever-present in that squad as a centre-back, and only 22 years of age. Broken into the Porto team a lot more this season. He just had a handful of games over the last 2 years, but this season really broken into that Porto team. Played 19 times in the league, 12 starts there for Porto, and probably now from next season he's going to be ready for that big step up. And I think with those connections, as you all know, I think Diogo Leite could definitely be an option that would suit Wolves, and I think could come into the squad and make a big difference. Other than him, I've gone with Ozan Kabak. Now you can see on the screen Kabak's statistics against other centre-backs in the top 5 leagues around the world, and they're really, really decent. On the ball, he seems really comfortable. Defensive stats are also pretty good, to be fair, in regards to those other centre-backs. So I think he's definitely an option. Of course, he was out on loan at Liverpool last season, and for some reason they didn't trigger that purchase clause in that contract, and he has gone back to Schalke. You could definitely see him leaving this summer, and again, a player with a good six months plus of Premier League experience, got experience of a top level, playing obviously in the Bundesliga for the last 3 years, quite often, playing a little bit for Galatasaray the year before that in 2018-19 when they won the Super League as well. So definitely an option for a still young player at the age of 21. I would like to see him come back. I think he would be a really, really decent option to possibly look at this summer. Now we're going to move on to the midfield now. Again, a little bit of a tricky area to tackle. We'll do the central midfielders first and then the wingers after that. So central midfielders, again, I'm going to merge into one. Ruben Neves, really heavy rumours at the moment that he could be moving on to possibly Arsenal at the moment, but could be moving on altogether to a different team. João Moutinho, I've not even included in this, to be honest. I've just got a feeling that he will move on this summer. Porto are a team that are said to be interested in him. But we look at the other options. Vitinha, who it's said that Wolves do have a option or an obligation to buy him. So it looks like he is going to be staying at the club this summer. And again, a pretty decent UEFA Under-21 tournament for him this summer. Lian and then Donker, we've still got in there as well. But you guys will know, obviously, if you've looked into the system and way that Bruno Lage plays, it is like two number 6s in that midfield role. So it's not two really attacking number 10 type players. It is two players that are going to hold, try and absorb the play and sort of cover defensively when those fullbacks want to push up. So I think Neves would fit that quite well. I think he would be the first one in my squad anyway. Purely because of how he's been playing under Nuno. I think this system will probably allow him a little bit more freedom, but I still think he's shown this season, especially if you look at those statistics, he can defend and he is that type of player that can win those duels. So Neves is a definite there. I think Vitinha would almost be sort of that backup to him. So that's almost one side sorted. Now the other side, I think you need a new number 6 in there. I think you need a fresh face in the middle. There's a couple of options that I've picked out. Of course, you've still got Dendoncker there. It'll be interesting to see how he goes next season if the club look to cash in on him. Again, the Euros with Belgium could be big for him. And Owen Otasowie, I think Owen Otasowie, if he can get his head screwed on this summer and really push on, it wouldn't surprise me to see him get a lot of game time in this role next year. So I think he's definitely a player worth persisting with next season as well. So two players that I have picked out as possible options for this role. Well, there's 3 players actually. So the first one is going to be Florentino Luis, a young midfielder, still only 21, on loan from Benfica at Monaco. And again, not really had a huge exposure to first team football. He was brought into the Benfica side a couple of years ago under Bruno Lage and performed really, really well. But as soon as Lage left, he struggled to break into the first team, went out on loan to Monaco this year and only played again a handful of times for Monaco, who finished 3rd in Ligue 1 in France. So I think he's definitely an option there. Whether I would get him and shoehorn him straight into the starting 11 would be a different conversation, but it wouldn't surprise me to see someone like him come into the squad. The next one I've picked out, which we have spoken about on the channel before, Andre Frank, Zambo Anguissa from Fulham. I looked at him before I did a video about players from relegated clubs that Wolves should have a look at, and he's definitely one of those on there. Just look at those statistics, guys. Against other midfielders in the top 5 leagues in Europe, they're phenomenal. And I think is in this role that I'm talking about, that defensive-minded player, but also a player that can get the ball and drive it up the field, I think he would almost be perfect for this sort of box-to-box, ball-winning midfielder type of number 6 role that Bruno Lage likes to play with. So I think that is definitely a really, really strong contender and strong option that I think Wolves should consider. But another one, probably a little bit more expensive option, a little bit more experience there in João Palhinha, who currently plays for Sporting. Wolves were heavily linked with him last summer for just a fraction of the fee that it would cost this summer. He was out of Braga on loan last season. Sporting were looking to sell him, but he persisted with Sporting. He wanted to try and fight into and break into that first team, which he did. And who can blame him? They went on to win the league unbeaten this season. It said that this summer, if he is to leave, it would cost not 25, about 30 million euros. Sorry. So it is quite a heavy fee, but possibly he's only someone that may well come in if Ruben Neves was to go. So I'll probably put Neves and maybe someone like Zambo Anguissa in that number 6 role. I would love to see those two in the midfield together. Now, the wingers, again, I'm going to merge this into both. I think now sort of a modern day winger likes or can play on both sides of the pitch. So, of course, like I did with the left-back role, I put Ait-Nouri in there because Johnny was going to be injured. Pedro Neto is more than likely going to be injured for a big chunk of the start of the season as well. So, of course, he's going to be in my squad plans and we'll put him on the screen, but he's not going to be the starter in this team. Now, for the left and the right-hand side, of course, you've got Adama Traore, who is predominantly a right winger, but again, strong rumours linking him with a move away from the club. Chelsea at the moment are the club that are linked with him. So in terms of position, if we're going to replace Adama, I'm going to go with Francisco Trincao, who is currently at Barcelona. Barcelona are going to have quite a mass sale, I think, this season and this summer. And the 21-year-old Portuguese winger could well be a player. We look at his stats, really, really strong, to be honest. Really good in terms of these are against attacking midfielders and wingers from the other top 5 leagues. And those sort of dribbling and just sort of attacking attributes are really, really strong actually for a player in that Barcelona team. So I think he's definitely an option. Could play on the right or the left. He's a left-footed player. So if he plays him on the right as like an inside forward or on the left as a more traditional winger, I'm not too sure how Bruno Lage would approach that really. Another one is Gonzalo Guedes. He's another player that has been heavily linked with a move to Wolves. Again, he's a right-footed player, but predominantly plays on the left. So again, you could put him on the left or right, depending on if you want them as that inside forward and whatnot. His stats aren't as strong. If you look at those, his stats aren't as strong as Trincão's. Although his goal contributions is a little bit better this year. He's scored 5 goals and 5 assists in La Liga this season. Those percentiles don't look as strong as what Trincão's did, to be honest, especially those sort of top tier ones. So yeah, it's interesting really looking at those. But yeah, certainly not as strong as what Trincão's were. And another one, if we're going to go with a more domestic option, I'm sticking with the Fulham theme as well. It's the third Fulham player that we've had on this list. Ademola Lookman, he is currently on loan at Fulham from RB Leipzig, I believe. So he will be returning to the German club, but may well return to the Premier League again this summer. And I think that he's definitely an option there. Really strong percentiles in certain areas again, and he played 34 times for Fulham this year, grabbing 4 goals and 4 assists just at the age of 23. So if I had to pick wingers, of course, you've still got Daniel Podence in there as well. You've got players like Corbiano who could definitely be called up to the first team, but it wouldn't surprise me to see 2 new players in this area, especially if you go on to lose Adama Traore. I think Trincão would definitely be the one that I'd like to pick out there. And then the strikers, again, we've got 2 strikers really. I'm going to sort of... It's quite difficult because they play 2 strikers. Lage played 2 strikers at Benfica, and the second striker, who was that João Felix player, sat into a number 10 role at times as well. So that's why I've actually put Morgan Gibbs-White in this role. Some people might be surprised by this, especially as they probably would have expected me to put Morgan as one of the wingers, but I've put Morgan as this second striker role, similar to how João Felix played at Benfica under Lage, and also because he actually played as a striker for us in the Asia Trophy under Nuno a couple of years ago. I think he scored a goal in that game against Newcastle as well. I think he's definitely got the attributes to do it. He's really knuckled down the second half of this season and done really well. But there is definitely areas to strengthen in the striker position. So Raul Jimenez is, of course, going to be my number 1 striker on the left-hand side there. Could play on the right. I don't know how we're going to play it, but Raul Jimenez there up top. I think we need another big striker like him. The 2 players that I've picked out are Carlos Vinicius, of course. Vinicius, a player who has been at Spurs this season. You look at his stats again. Possibly these stats may be skewed slightly due to his lack of game time, but done really, really well whenever actually called upon for Spurs. He scored a single goal in the Premier League. He only grabbed 308 minutes, though, in that competition, but scored 6 goals in the Europa League for Spurs as well. So did really, really well there. And, of course, was a big, big player under Bruno Lage at Benfica. Scored a lot of goals there during his time, so Lage will be familiar with what Vinicius is like. Another player that I've pinpointed for this area is Haris Seferovic, another striker at Benfica at the moment, and had a really, really strong year this term. 22 goals in the league, I believe, finishing the 2nd top goal scorer in the Primeira Liga behind Pedro Gonçalves, the ex-Wolves player. But he's got 22 goals and 7 assists this season. But just in general, the last three years, he's been really, really solid in terms of his goal output, Haris Seferovic. I'm surprised that we've not seen this name linked a little bit more before. He is now probably at his prime at 29 years of age. So you could say he's going to be a very, very similar player to Raul Jimenez. But I think him or Carlos Vinicius would probably pip it for me. So I'd probably go Raul Jimenez and Carlos Vinicius up top. But Morgan Gibbs-White and, of course, the player that we haven't mentioned, Fabio Silva, I think this system could really help him. And with the coaching staff that Bruno Lage is looking to bring in, I think this could really help Fabio Silva move forward and become a really, really strong player for Wolves. Of course, the backup players are Patrick Cutrone and Rafa Mir. Either of those, it wouldn't surprise me to see come back and play some sort of part in the Wolves squad. Cutrone, of course, if he's welcomed back, it'll be interesting to see if the whole reason of him being pushed out was by Nuno, or if he just simply isn't good enough. Of course, played a little bit for the Italy under-21s at the UEFA Euro under-21 tournament. And Rafa Mir, really, really strong season in Spain for him. Unfortunately, got relegated with Huesca, but a really strong amount of goals scored for him. So, again, a lot of fans wanted to see him have one more opportunity in a Wolves shirt, and it'll be interesting to see if Bruno Lage welcomes him back. So, a quick recap of the team, roughly how I would expect Bruno Lage to possibly line up from the start of next season. Patricio in goal, Semedo right back, Bolly, and I'm gonna go Diogo Light as the other centre back, a left back as Ryan Nouri, right midfield as Trincao. Central midfielders, I'm going to go Neves and I'm going to go Zambo and Gui. So, you know what I've not mentioned as well? Maybe Connor Cody could be reintroduced into that central midfield role. Maybe as a number 6 if we're going to be playing like this. But please don't shoot me. Left midfield, I'm going to go with Pedence. I think that's definitely a safe option. And then up front, I'm going to go Raul Jimenez and Carlos Vinicius. Guys, do let me know in the comment section down below. Do you agree, disagree with any of my thoughts in today's video? And let me know how excited you are to see Bruno Lage finally come in to Wolverhampton Wanderers to manage the club for next season. Of course, we did a video a little bit more in depth on him last week, so be sure to go and check that one out. And until next time, guys, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you all very, very soon.